So this section and the node farm project are now basically completed, but in this video I wanted to very quickly go over my VS Code setup and also together with you set up the Prettier extension. And so these are the extensions that I have installed in my VS Code, and not all of them are going to be relevant for this course, but whenever there is a relevant extension, I will mention it by the time that it is useful. For example, this .env extension here will be useful to highlight environmental variables in a .env file. So let's just quickly go over some of them. For example, ESLint is useful to find bugs in our code, and actually we're going to set up ESLint with Node a bit later in another section. We have image preview, which is a very nice small extension to preview images, and maybe you have noticed it when we were doing this. For example, this template here, you see that here on the left side it displays all the images that we include in a website. So in this example, it is this one. All right, so just something small that I found very useful. What else do we have here? We have Prettier, and so this is the one that I want to configure with you in this video. But for now, let's go over some other here. So Pug is a language that we're going to use later to build templates, and so it's useful to have this beautify extension for that one as well. Then I also have tab 9, which does some nice magic autocompleter sometimes. Then I also have to do highlight, which is very useful to do this kind of magic here. For example, when I have to do, it will highlight it in this green color, or if I write bug like this, it's going to turn red, or fix me. And I have all kinds of these keywords here that I have defined with different colors to make them visible in my code. And it even shows up here on in this scroll bar. If I had these in different lines, then you would see the 3 colors are now here in this side, and this is incredibly useful. All right. And then, of course, my VS Code theme, which is Oceanic Next. So I get this question all the time. And so instead of asking it, well, here is the answer for that. All right. But now about, where is it? So Prettier. This is a very nice extension that can automatically format our code, no matter if JavaScript or CSS or even HTML. With this extension, we no longer need to worry about formatting. And it is actually very opinionated, so it follows a very strict set of rules with only a small configuration possible. But in this case of code formatting, it's actually very nice when someone else takes these decisions for you. So that is one less thing that we have to worry about doing. Okay, so our code will automatically format without us having to do anything or worrying about a certain style. Okay, so if you want to give it a try, please go ahead and install it now. Here, probably you have a install button. I, of course, already have it installed. Next up, what you need to do in order to get the full power of this extension is to go to your settings and then activate format on save. So just search for format and then format on save. So whenever we save a file now, it will automatically use Prettier to format our code. So we installed Prettier, we enabled format on save, and now we can configure Prettier a little bit. Again, as I mentioned, it's very opinionated, so there's not a lot of stuff that we can change, but some things we actually can change. Now, we could do that here, right in VS Code, but instead, what we can also do is to define a configuration file. Okay, and I find that actually better to do. So instead of using VS Code to define the settings, we can use a Prettier config, which is called Prettier RC. All right, so it has dot and then Prettier RC. Then we open the curly braces, and then in here we can define some settings. And I find it better to do it like this because then I can change configurations from one project to another. And even more importantly, it makes it easier for multiple developers on the same team to all use the same configuration. Okay, so that can be very, very useful on teams, even more useful than when you're just working on your own. Now, the only setting that I actually want to change here is called single quote. So actually Prettier already has this auto completion built in, and so it knows that single will mean single quote, and the default is false, but I want to set it to true. And so what that's going to do is that all my quotes will change from double quotes to single quotes. Okay, so I gave it a save, and here is our index.js. And now let's see if there is any double quotes here. And I think they're not, because I pretty consistently use the single quotes anyway. But let's just put some double quotes somewhere here. And now I'm going to give it a save and take a look at what happens. Whoa, so first of all, you saw that a lot of stuff changed here. And so our code kind of jumped around here. But this is where I had the single quotes here. And so you see that they are back to being the double quotes. Now, all this code jumping around was probably because at some point I had multiple lines, and Prettier does not allow that. So if I have something like this and give it a save, then Prettier will only allow one blank line. And actually this was for me the most difficult change of all the formatting that Prettier does, and it's not configurable. So we cannot change that, unfortunately, because sometimes I like to have multiple lines, but with Prettier that's just not possible. I can do something like this, and then it's gonna work, but it's just a workaround. But still with this problem, I really prefer to use Prettier. Again, because it takes the thinking of formatting away from me. For example, something else that I did here was this. So whenever a certain number of characters in a line is exceeded, it will then find a good way of breaking the code into multiple lines. So that's what it did here. Let's see what else we have here. Well, I think besides these changes that we just saw, everything kind of remained the same. Okay, and so from now on, in all the rest of the code in this course, I will always use this Prettier RC configuration file with autosave on true. Okay, another thing that I didn't mention is that it automatically puts the semicolons. So if I go ahead and delete this one, and this one, and this one, give it a save, you see that they are back. All right. Now, if you want to get an overview of all the stuff you can configure with Prettier, well, that's very simple. If we write Prettier into Google, so they position themselves as opinionated code formatter, like I told you before. And down here, we have the options that we can actually configure. So the print width, the tab width. So if you're one of these people who uses for width, which I actually was until kind of recently, like 1 year ago, well, then you can configure that using the tab width. Then you have, for example, the quotes that we just changed. So single quote, we put it to true. And you have all kinds of stuff. You can actually see it here on the right side. Okay, but again, it's not a lot of configuration. So most of the stuff you can really not change. Another thing that we can experiment with is the tab width. So let's set this one to, I think the default is 80. Let's set it to something like 120. And I thought this would change this piece of code here. So being back to what we had before, everything in one line, just to show you. But maybe our line is actually even longer than that. So let's put something really ridiculous here, like 200. And whoa, what's happening here? Oh, so you see that actually it now changed to something even weirder. Okay, so I never did this kind of experiment. Put it back to 120. And what's going on here? So let me just quickly fix this. And it does it again. All right. Put it back to 80 as we had. And now it looks like this. Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I that's not what I wanted to do. Of course, I didn't want to change the tab width, which by default is 2. I wanted to change the print width. So basically how wide one line can be. Oh, that was really stupid. So now it's back to normal because the default is 2. So yeah, now you see that it actually got back into one line here, because at this point here we are at column 96, as you see down here, and so the limit is 120, and so it didn't have to wrap this line of code into the second one. Okay, but I actually like this 80 limit, and so I'm going to put it back here and use that one in the future. So actually that's the default, so let me just get rid of it, give it a save, give it a save, and so we're back to the way it was before. So if you think that you like this, then please go ahead and use it just like I do. But if not, well, then just kind of ignore everything that I said in this video and just keep doing it the more normal way. So that's no problem as well.